Cheers, everybody. We are back for another edition of Bourbon on a Budget. Brendan Sinone, Ben Cock, and we're
Is
smoking.
it Bourbon on a Budget?
We're smoking today. Ben, start us off. What do we got? Actually, real quick, if you're watching, if you're listening, tell us whether you prefer bourbon or scotch in the comments. I'd love to hear that. So bourbon or scotch, just comment that right now. What you do like about it, what you don't, whatever. Just shoot us a comment. Let's roll. Ben, what you got?
Okay, so this week we're doing something a little different because I was sold on this bottle by two reasons. One, if you watch the Whiskey Vault guys, then you'll know that they're big review guys. They do a ton of scotches, and they're pretty cool. Well, they recently reviewed this Kirkland, you're already halfway there when you say Kirkland Islay single malt Scotch whiskey from Kirkland, baby. And so it was at my Costco, $39, $39.99.
Okay.
And these guys like raved about this bottle. Like they were pretty stoked on the quality and the price point of like where this was. And so I was staring at it. There was 3 bottles left. I was,
flying off the shelves.
Yeah, it was scarcity. It was scarcity. You just you're like, oh my gosh. Exactly. So I grabbed a bottle and I was like, I want to send something. I want to send a sample to Brendan because he's our Scotch guy certainly more than me or TJ. And so I've been sipping on it this week. I don't know if you can see the level that is.
Oh, yeah. Did some work.
Yeah, I got probably like 5 or 6 ounces out of it so far. But we don't know much about it from what I can tell, at least from what the guys are also saying, is that it's from an unknown kind of like distillery. We don't know what it's from. We just know it's Kirkland, right? But it's 100 proof. And so when I think 100 proof Scotch, hello, because most of them are a little bit lower than that. So I was actually pretty excited about it. So I really want to see what Brendan has to say about it.
Oh, so did a little bit of research on this. So Ben mentioned the price of the proof, and right there, I mean, you get an Islay whiskey, 100 proof, which is ambitious, like he said, and it's priced pretty well to be single malt. Like, okay, that's all good stuff. It's not the source is not mentioned. It is Alexander Murray who bottles it, correct, Ben?
Yeah, Alexander Murray, and I'm from what I can tell, he does like independent bottling for Costco and Total Wine and
Trader Joe's as well.
Something
we don't have Trader Joe's.
No friggin' idea.
Sell liquor here, but liquor.
But this is a peated Scotch, which again is way freaking outside of my typical profile. But
it is Kirkland Signature.
It's Kirkland Signature.
Inside
How do you turn that down?
Way inside of your profile.
I mean, come on, it's impossible. It's like the best.
Do you like the K-Sig? Do you like the K-Sig vodka?
Yes, actually, the French and the American, but the French one is better.
Yeah, I've heard that their vodkas, because vodkas have a huge discernible difference anyways in vodka typically, unless you're talking about stuff that's in a plastic bottle. So like that's definitely your way to go rather than like a Grey Goose or something like that. But I'm not a vodka guy. But yeah, Kirkland has some really good value. As much as I like to dump on Costco sometimes for their Kevin, damn you, liquor store manager. They do some really good stuff. I actually got a bottle, Ben, a couple years ago, I think 3 years now at this point, it was Kirkland brand Scotch. It was
Ooh, that was a 7-year. Yeah, that's not good.
This was 20 years old.
Oh, sorry, the Scotch. I think I'm talking about the bourbon.
Oh, the bourbon. Yeah, I've heard the bourbon's kind of nasty. This is a Scotch. It was also Alexander Murray, but it was very different in profile because it was Speyside, which is typically going to be a lot more sweet, and I think it was a sherry cask finish, so very very friendly and fruit forward. And this, like you mentioned, is peated. It's an Islay whiskey, so it is usually going to be the more aggressive, smoky, peaty, brine forward Scotch. So that's what we know about this. There's some speculation online on the Reddit. This is Brooklotic, which is an awesome distillery. Do you guys remember the Octomore that we had?
Yeah.
That I broke the glass of.
I want to say the guys also mentioned another Another one was like
Kalela. Does that sound right?
Kalila, and also something about maybe Good Charlotte, and that's a band. But
Good Charlotte, so that Brooke
Port
Loddick
Charlotte,
does.
that's what it is.
Brooke Loddick does Port Charlotte. And
okay.
As we get into this, the nose it does remind me a lot of the Port Charlotte.
How did you?
What a good
This is the anthem. Throw all your hands up, you.
Yeah.
How did you not remember that, Ben? Like, gosh, that's such an easy one. That's one of my favorite scotches, to be honest. All right, what do you get on the nose on this, Brendan? You're leading the blind here.
So much stuff. All right, so I got notes. First off, yeah, it's gonna hit you.
Thank you for saying that twice.
I was stalling for myself to find my said.
I was like, what's he doing here?
It's gonna hit you with a lot of the brine, the tar, the smokiness. To me, it smells like the day after like a fireplace goes out. Like, you know how it still kind of has that little wafting smoky feel. At least ours does, but we have some weird ventilation issues in the house as well.
We have gas fireplaces.
Oh, that must be nice. So once you get past
We're
that,
rich, dog.
once you get past that, a ton of sweet flavors. And it, to me, it's like half of it is like custardy, butterscotch, like this very savory sweetness. And the other half is super fruit forward. You get a lot of berries, like dark fruits like dates, plums, also like a little lemon zest. So I'm getting a ton of different flavors on this. I'm not sure if you guys are picking up similar stuff, if you're able to fight through that smoke, but
how
there's
do you
a lot
fight
going
through
on.
So
dude,
do you do anything special to fight through the smoke?
Gotta get 3 ounces in. 3 ounces in.
Oh, so you get drunk and you can smell it better.
I'm telling you. So let me just tell you about my drinking experience this evening, because I have been kind of trying to figure this out. Okay, so your first ounce is going to be you sitting next to a campfire eating a barbecue Lay's potato chip, right? You're just breathing a bunch of smoke. There's a little meatiness to it, right? And then once you get past that, it's almost a little like orange juice, like a fermented orange juice, kind of like very juicy notes. One thing that I've also picked up, and I don't know if you've like, just as you're like looking at your glass or whatever, Scotch, at least this Scotch, seems to be like way more oily than a lot of like bourbons. And that could be the peat. I don't know. But to me, like if I'm looking at it in the glass, like the legs on it, the way it like clings to the walls, it seems very oily. Okay. Once you're past your like, yes, 100%. Right. Once you're past your like Lay's potato chip, barbecue potato chip phase next to a campfire, then I'm getting some typical like bourbon notes. Like I get like a little bit of vanilla. Again, you have to be like really beat down with peat to get past that.
Peat down.
Yeah, a little peat down. But I do get that like on the nose. Now on the palate, it's a little different. There's definitely the smoke. I think the smoke is there throughout most of my drinking experience.
Yeah.
But I do get the fruitier notes, certainly. But it's harder for me to see or find the vanilla or caramel on the palate. It's easier for me to find it on the nose.
Certainly more prevalent on the nose. There's a lot more going on in the nose than the actual palate for me. We'll dive into that a little bit more. TJ, how are you experiencing this? You're not a Scotch guy. TJ thinks that Glenlivet 12 is smoky. So this is
just didn't know how to describe it. That joke is dead. Just like you revisiting old trolls saying Jordan Travis wasn't a good quarterback. It's time to leave that in the past.
Sucks to be right all the time. What?
Travis,
sorry.
I barely know him.
I love it.
Plus. So Ben's right. After you take a few sips of this and get a little bit down, I am able to get past some of that brine, some of that smoke on the front end.
Does it turn like juicy? I get like a very juicy citrusy.
So I still don't
orange.
I still don't find the nose like and I think we've talked about this, but it's just so much more delicate to me than a bourbon nose, right? Which is just so American. And I even grabbed a bourbon just to kind of.
I don't think delicate. Maybe it's more dense or
nuanced. Maybe.
Yeah. And okay, complex. So yeah, maybe delicate's not the right word. Yeah, so a bourbon nose is just like boom in your face caramel, right? Like, so I think that's just a very American thing, right? Like, you know, like
we don't want to think about it. We want it right now. We
Very-
want all the instant
boom.
gratification
Yeah,
of the
absolutely.
smell. I get vanilla, I get
want a
caramel, I
pure-
get cherry. Yes, yes, yes.
I want a pure sugar drink right now. And this is just clearly not that, right? Like, so I do get
sorry,
past
TJ,
some of
hold them up real quick, please, together. Look at the color difference. You're talking about a 10. Well, I don't know the age on that one. I'm assuming it's, 6,
this
7
is
years
finished.
old.
This is double barrel. This is the 1910. So
okay.
Even then,
it's just what I had in the. It's just what I had in the.
When I poured this, because this is it's like a black bottle. When I was pouring this, it was strikingly lighter than I was expecting. I remember thinking like, oh, I think, and I could be wrong. Are Scotch usually in used oak? Is it used oak barrels?
Yeah,
okay, so that would make sense.
The Scots love to. It's cheaper to buy used oak.
Okay, so then that would make sense why it'd be a little less colored. I also think this is not 10 years. The guys are saying if it was 10 years, then they would say 10
at least 10 years.
Yeah. You know, just whatever.
If I get past some of that, Brian, I don't know that I'm picking up a crazy amount on it, but it is juicy. Like I do get some of the fruitiness on it. So like that's where I think I agree with. I get less of the custard, less of the, kind of the notes that Brendan was talking about.
Yeah.
A little berry, I guess, like fruity with the juice. But yeah, I'll buy that.
Berries and cream. Don't Sonone it. I got honey as well on the nose.
Really?
Oh, we don't play. I only play that game on FSU Spaces. I don't
vanilla pudding.
It's hard for me to find the
vanilla
the cream.
pudding. Yeah, I'm not seeing that.
This could just be. I could be way off, or it could be an example of like me just being more acclimated to smoky stuff and being able to kind of get past. Like it hits you initially, but then I just kind of get through it pretty quickly.
It's a fun drinking experience.
Mm-hmm.
Like the more I drink it, the more I'm like, oh, there's a little bit over here. It's like you're exploring a castle versus like a bourbon is like going into an open concept home. Like I can kind of see all the
a little musty. So
There's
that is a great comparison.
Yeah, Ben's getting into the very Scottish vibe there to get into castles. Nicely done.
Yeah, you explore a castle. There's all these corridors you can explore down. Yeah,
we've changed up our rating system where we kind of go and rate as we go. I want to go back to the old system today. I want to go through.
I wouldn't even know how to rate it. I would have no idea.
I have no clue how to rate this tonight.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just move on to the. Let's move. Yeah, I would give this zeros all the way. So, can I say that?
Yeah, I mean it's too late now, but it was funny.
Why didn't you just say it out loud then?
Because you guys were talking. I didn't want to interrupt.
Just interrupt.
Tastes like King Arthur in a glass.
Yeah, there you go. King Arthur, I barely know him. Taste, Brendan, walk us through that.
So for all the complexity and nuance and layers I'm getting on the nose, to me the palate is solid. It's enjoyable, but it's decisively less layered. I am getting ashy qualities, a little bit of that smoke, that barbecue. I think Ben mentioning like barbecue lays is really nice because you get some sweet with that. You get that obviously that mesquite, smoky vibe to it, but I'm still getting the custard. I'm getting this little spice, like a little peppery, and I'm getting some citrus though, more just lemon to me. And all the mouth feel does feel fairly creamy and custardy. But those are like 4 or 5 things, which is great, especially at the price point, which I don't know if you guys know this, but I'm going to count price for every single category that we go through.
As you should. Yes.
But just going off of that palate prepared me for a just super like chaotic but fun experience. And the palate to me, the nose prepared me for that, but the palate was more just kind of, it was fine. It just tasted like a standard smoky Scotch. It's nice. It's just, there's again 4 or 5 things. I was hoping for like 10 different notes and to be this chaotic experience. Not quite that for me.
From the reviews I've been seeing, this is my like a very like straight down the middle of the lane Isla, which is kind of what I was hoping for. Like I just wanted something that wasn't super offensive, but also wasn't like, oh, I'm going to go try rye, so I buy a Midwinter's.
Yeah, this is a nice depiction of what a Isla whiskey.
I just want to be like, hey, this is kind of where that direction goes, and then let me explore a little bit. But I kind of agree with you. I think the nose experience is a little more complex and different than the palate, and that could just be that my palate isn't as well adjusted to like fighting back the smoke or peat notes. But I would agree. Like there's more to explore on the nose so far. Again, I'm still drinking it because it's a fun experiment to me. Like this is like way more fun than I've had with scotches in the past. So maybe my palate's changing. Maybe it's just going into like accepting other thing mode. I don't know.
Ooh, yeah, you're growing up. You got a big boy palate now.
Yeah.
What would you suggest to Ben if he likes this entry level Isla?
So if you're enjoying this, Ben, which you seem to be enjoying, correct?
Just other things made by Kirkland Signature.
So if
specifically other Kirkland items,
the first thing I could think of, if you're liking this, I would go with if it is the rumors are true. If this is Bruichladdich, I would go with the Good Charlotte, aka the Port Charlotte, 10 year, which is going to be a smoky, briny Scotch, but it also has some barrel finishing. I think it's got some like wine casks and a few other things. To where it's like $75. It's relatively like available. It's not super expensive. It's a 10-year Scotch. You know what you're getting with it. I think Bruichladdich does like an amazing job. It's one of my favorite distilleries all around. Everything that I've ever had from them, smoked, not smoked, peated, not peated, young, old. It's all really, really good stuff. They're the same people who do Octomore. So I would recommend that. And then maybe go for a little Talisker 10. I think Talisker is Isla. It is definitely smoky. Talisker, I barely know her.
Talisker Storm is at Costco. It's like there
for $40. So
I'm like, it's around the same price point.
Yeah, that's once a year they come out with that, and Oban Little Bay, usually around the same time. And both
you're
$40. Right. I actually like Oban Little Bay. It's not super smoky, but it is nice and briny, so it's a good another transition one. So yeah, all those are like you can get decent Scotch for like $45 to $70 still. Those would be some.
So as another note, because we posted a picture of the Kirkland Isla on our Instagram, and we had that one dude, Ryan, who's like freaking blowing up on TikTok, got 100,000 followers. Congrats, Ryan. Anyway, I know you follow us constantly, so he's probably listening right now.
We're not live.
And he said, yeah, he's definitely listening to me. He had recommended try some, I could be pronouncing this wrong, Bowmore 12 or Balmore 12, Bruichladdich Classic Lottie, and Kalila Distillery 12. So anyway, those are all the ones that he'd recommended, and he's a big Scotch guy from what I can tell as well. So anyway,
the classic Lottie is Bruichladdich as well. It's just not peated, but it's also very, very, very good.
Okay.
And it's got a cool color. It's like a nice turquoise colored bottle, which is neat.
Oh, that was like turquoise colored whiskey. That's crazy. That seems crazy.
Something weird to your poops.
So I like this.
The more you drink it.
Let me back
That's
that
how
up.
it's supposed to be. That's how it's. The more you drink it, the more you're gonna be like, it's pretty good.
That's all alcohol. I will say what Ben has said, and I'm not picking. I will say I think it's going to take a little time to kind of get into where I'm like, pulling out this note or that note. I'm hearing you guys say things and kind of like, okay, well I can see that, or I can pick that, like once I hear it. But I'll give it the fact that I'm not hating it, right? Like I think I could, to a point where if I went over to somebody's house and they were like, I'll pour you a whiskey, and they're pouring a Scotch, like I don't know if it was something similar to this, which I'd obviously have no idea, right? If they're just pouring something, I wouldn't be like offended. I would be like, choke this down. I think it's pretty good. I think you kind of learn to get underneath some of the, whether it be brine or smoke or salt or just whatever the situation is. You kind of like, I don't know, just chug a little bit of it at the beginning, and then you can kind of pick up more stuff at the end.
Here's an experiment for you, TJ. Have you been drinking mostly out of like one side of the glass? Like, so I usually just kind of hold it and drink out of one side, right? So when I do that,
pay attention.
If you'll like turn it around, like, so if you're drinking at like 6 o'clock, just turn it around to like 12 o'clock and nose it. And I get way more bourbon. Like, I don't know, maybe that it's like dry on the other side or something. Don't know, but I get more bourbon when I'm kind of like approaching it from the other direction.
You're probably just breathing and smelling it different. Like you're probably just doing a breathing exercise there. It's probably
you're smelling the CO2 that you put back out is what you're doing.
Is that really what's happening?
No. I mean, there is more CO2 on that side.
But let it dry. Let it dry there for a second, and then go back to it and see if you can pick up on, Anyway, it's
that's
I
crazy.
was getting different notes on the other side of the glass. Again,
This
it's
this is a breakthrough for you guys. Like the fact that you're able to get through.
I don't dislike this as much as I
Yeah.
have in the past.
There's nothing like at this point. Like, okay, you can mess with Pete and you can mess with Smoke and Brian. Like you're good now. Like now it's just
Who's
you're gonna
Pete?
be able to. This guy that I messed with one time at band camp.
Pete him. I barely know him.
But you're
Correct
right.
them.
I do think that this is. Oh boy. So I think once every other month we should do a Scotch.
All right, down. I got.
Yeah.
some.
6 a year. 6 a year. It's not crazy. Still doing way more bourbon, but something different. What about mixing Scotch and bourbon? Is that crazy? Like the campfire thing.
The campfire.
not.
So it's not crazy. It's not easy to do because a little bit of Scotch takes over, especially one like
Ruins
this.
the whole thing.
It takes over a lot of it. Yeah.
Is Campfire a blend or is it like
Yeah.
a peated rye?
No, it's a blend
no.
of bourbon,
Oh,
rye,
really?
and Scotch.
Like a
I
peated
believe.
Scotch. Okay.
But I will say the 2 times I've had campfire, all I got on it was the Scotch. Like that's all I could pick up.
Go back and
If you-
try it now. that you've
If you
might
have a
be
bottle
different
right
yeah.
now? You have a
No,
bottle?
I had it whiskey.
Oh, I was like, if you do, go
it's
drink it. I'll be like,
it's
try
an
it.
expensive bottle. Like that's my main thing. Is
It's like
like
$70 to try. Yeah.
I mean, minimum. I think I saw it at 85 the other day, and it's just like it's.
Woof.
I would if it was half of that. Like, yeah, that'd be a lot of fun to have and to experiment with and try. See what you
it's
can
hard
get,
for
but
me to
that's-
like do stuff like that because it's $70 to have nothing consequential, like you don't get Scotch, you don't get bourbon, you're getting this like amalgamation of
It's
something.
very niche.
Yeah. And so I'd rather just have this, like have Scotch or have bourbon
I agree.
in theory, I don't know.
Brendan, talk to us about the finish, and then Ben, I don't even know if you want to rate this or not. I don't know how to rate it. So
I don't know how to rate this either. It's more
We can
just
just
like
let Brendan rate it and then
Ah.
go with that.
No, you guys can have fun and rate it if you want. I mean,
I want to do a have you ever watched
Two's across the board.
Yeah. Have you ever watched that one dude Ryan review something like his
No.
review? He doesn't say anything. He drinks it and then just makes like a face about it. That's how I feel about this review. It'd be like I drink it and be like,
Yeah. So
That's about it.
he
That's all I can do.
He slams the whiskey bottle down and then slams the Glencairn down or the glass or whatever.
"What I review
And
something
then
I don't know about."
He drinks it, swishes around, takes a minute, and then if it's good, it's like, and if it's bad, he's like, like he just,
pretty good
like
idea.
that's his review. That's the whole review. Like they're really cool. You should follow him.
gotta
It's
get the
pretty cool.
TikTok activated.
He's on Instagram too. So.
Oh,
Yeah.
that too. The finish, to me, we start off with this super, has been articulated nicely, juicy palate, or excuse me, nose, and then the palate said a little bit of that, and it just keeps getting more and more dry and ashy and less nuanced and layered as you go through. I find, to me, the finish to be the least enjoyable part of this. It's just again, it's very dry and tannicky. Doesn't have any of that fruity element that you start off with on the nose. It just kind of digresses throughout the drink. It's not bad. This is probably an average finish, but I thought the nose was really good. The palate was solid. Ben, that's really inappropriate in the chat. Thank you for that. And the finish to me is just very. If I had to do a face, I would go.
It's a pretty face.
Thank you.
Interesting.
So why don't you rate this thing, Brendan?
Okay. Do you want to go on our scale?
Yeah, you give the one
Yeah.
scale on this.
Alrighty,
Me
so
and TJ are
I'm
not gonna scale.
factoring in value this entire time. The nose, to
$40.
me, I think it's a really good nose, super enjoyable, in-depthy, nuanced. I'm gonna go with a 1.5. I like the nose a ton. I think it's really, really good. Taste out of 4, I'll go with a 2.25. It's above average. It's nothing remarkable. It's solid. It's enjoyable. It is a Scotch.
Can I pause you real quick? If
Sure.
you were to have given this
No.
if you were to have given this a 1.5 or let's say a 3, do
Mhm.
you think if you would have given this a 3, we would have liked it more or less?
Yeah, you're both simpleton followers, so probably.
Okay, so I didn't, but here's why I didn't know, because I didn't know if that might mean there was more peat, if it was more bold to where we wouldn't like it as much, right? Like if you were going to give a bourbon a 3, maybe it's sweeter, maybe it's more complex, maybe it's got like, things that we could pick up. I'm kind of thinking, since you're more experienced, would a 3 for you have been too much for us almost?
Oh, that's a good point. Maybe. I mean, that seems reasonable. It wasn't even like this was like not peaty enough or whatever. Just what the nose was so, again, layered and nuanced, and to me the palate was like had like 4 or 5 things going on it. So that was more to me is like when I'm going for a Scotch, especially like a smoky peaty one like this. Like I want to be kind of slapped around a little bit, but it doesn't have to just be with smoke and stuff. I just want it like again, I want chaotic. Like I want there to be a dozen different things bouncing off the walls at different times that I can kind of pull and sample and just on the palate, man, like that just kind of fell short for me. So I think that's more than like you guys could have enjoyed, like if it was a sweeter Scotch, you could have enjoyed all those different layers if there was like a lot going on without it being peaty. This was just, it was peaty, but it just fell flat a little bit once you got past the nose. So yeah.
Like an onion, it's got layers. Okay. Rate the finish and the rest, and we'll get out. My kids are really into Shrek right now, so
I've got layers.
Sure.
Layers.
It's the kids.
Donkey. The
we
finish
watch it
me
every day.
It's a good movie. Mama, come drop buttons. I'm gonna go with the 0.5 for finish. It's a fine finish. It's the least impressive part of this. It's not bad by any means. Yeah, it's all right. So we go to cohesiveness and complexity, which is out of. What?
Come on, Brandon. Learn our scale, man. Freaking everyone knows.
I don't know. I'm actually gonna tap out here and ask for your guys' help on the cohesiveness and complexity. We can work on this together.
I would say it's more complex than a typical bourbon.
Oh yeah.
But I think it gets less complex. It gets spicier as it goes through your tasting, right? And it gets like more one note.
Yeah.
So if it's out of 1, I'm going 0.5. Yeah.
Okay, that's fair. I was thinking about 0.75. I accept 0.5. I think that's reasonable on this.
Value. That's the real question.
So Brendan, so he's at a 4.75 out of 8 going into value. Yeah. So above average, but
above
not
average,
crazy above average.
It's an average
single
price.
Malt.
Yeah.
Isla single malt, 100 proof for $40.
So yeah, it's Isla. It's Isla, which is going to be always a little bit more expensive. Single malt is going to be a little bit more expensive. We're talking about above average tasting experience for sure, easily, like safely, at a below like for a Scotch, like this is a below average price. So I think value. I think you could push me to 1.5 is where I'm going to start the bidding at 1.5 because I think obviously this is easily a 1, and then I think you can talk me up to 1.5 on the high side. But it's Kirkland. Ben shared this with me. I know how much he loves Kirkland and Costco. I don't want to besmirch the name of Costco any more than I ever have on this show. So
I want to know if I were to just send this to you and be like, "Hey, I found this bottle." That's what I want to know more of, like, just a random Scotch.
I think it would have been. I think it would have been an enjoyable Scotch. Like this is so the final score is what, TJ?
6.25.
And that's a buy for us. Like anything between a 6 and a 7 is like, yes, that's if it's something that sounds interesting to you, that's a buy. I think if you're looking to get into an Isla Scotch like Ben is, this is a really great introduction. It's got smoke, it's got peat, but it's not too aggressive. There's enough going on the nose where you can sit down and enjoy it. Like, yes, this is a good value.
Is it a liter or 750?
750.
So the only quibble. Oh boy, that's a good one. The only quibble I have, quibble.
It's quibble.
Quibbles quabble, but they don't qual down.
The quintessential part of this argument is
quadrilateral.
I think I would, if I had rated this the entire same way that Brendan did when I got to value, I'd have gone 1.25 just for the record. Because I think you rated it as a little bit above average. Like it didn't quite hit that 5 out of 8. So I think I'd have rated it a little bit better value. So I think I'd have this at a 6 for the record.
So
you asked, you just asked opinions. I'm not telling you that.
We're not that. I said between a 1 and a 1.2 or 1 and 1.5. So I don't think we're far off. I do think one thing, like because you guys aren't. I'm going to be a snob because you guys aren't super into Scotch. Like if you're finding a Scotch that's drinkable below $35 or so, like we can find. This is what we do: is we find different ryes and bourbons that are below $30 to $40, and we can find them all the time that are at the very least serviceable, if not like an Old Forest 100. Right. Great. to find a Scotch that is enjoyable and drinkable under $40, like you can go terribly wrong at like $30 or below for Scotch. So I'm counting that in as like
that makes sense.
Yeah.
I like that. So yeah, like your typical bourbon that you get for I mean, just a maker's market at $22, $24 is not going to be offensive ever. It just may not be the most exciting thing. But you're saying a bad Scotch can be
it just
really
be funky and shiny and sharp and not
Grainy.
Grainy for sure. The bell curve, I guess what I'm trying to say is the bell curve for price on this is way at the flat area in the beginning. Whereas $40 for bourbon, you're starting to kind of trend up a little bit. Like you can find decent bourbons at $40. Scotch, no, hard to do.
Makes sense. Ben, do you have anything else before we get out of here? We've gone for about 30 minutes, a little bit longer of an episode, but scotching it up.
Yeah, I don't think so. I think this is pretty much. I'm not hating this as much as I usually do, and it could just be like I said. It could be my palate's changing, or I'm just kind of like ready for a different drinking experience than just a typical bourbon. I mean, I'm gonna probably grab a bottle of something like later once we get off, and just to see what a bourbon tastes like going back from a Scotch.
That's why
it could be.
Why I poured this.
It could be the most boring experience of my life, which would be a little depressing, but we'll see. So. Tune in next time on Bourbon on a Budget to see what I think.
Thank you for sharing this, and kudos on you for branching out a little bit. This was a worthwhile endeavor and experiment. And I'm glad you found it. It's cool. It's a good bottle.
I will have you know that the day I went and bought this, they also had Buffalo Trace in the cabinet, and I was like, I'm just gonna do the Scotch.
Oh, so, how much?
You had just bought 2 Buffalo Traces.
$22,
$19.99.
Wow, that's a great value.
It was a great value, but I was like, I have Buffalo Trace. Like,
what am
I gonna do with my Buffalo Trace?
It would exactly. You need another bottle of it. It's like, but that's just, I mean, in the teens. You're talking about in the teens for Buffalo Trace.
I know.
It's so good.
It's just like, what am I gonna do with another one? Just put it in my cabinet and never drink it because it's 90 proof and not great.
My wife's grandpa would go, he's Polish in northern. What am I gonna do with it? That's Buffalo Trace. What am I gonna do with it?
Tune in next time. No, thank you guys for hanging out. Next week's Thanksgiving, so we'll have to figure that out. But shout out Thanksgiving week.
What are we
themed episode.
What are we gonna drink?
We'll talk about it off of here. We'll talk about it off here.
Never mind.
All right. Tune in next time. For myself.
And myself.
TJ Pinger, Ben Cock.
A wee lad.
Cheers. Cheers.
Oh. Kirkland. The most Scottish of names.
Kirkland.
Kirkland.
Kirklandic.